Welcome to the Vaxa Bureau's Intelligence Optimised podcast, where strategy meets insight across government, business and critical sectors. I'm Todd Crowley, and today we're unpacking the aftermath of the Australian federal election, a result that's reshaped the political map and recalibrated priorities from Canberra to the Indo-Pacific. Joining me is Kathryn Conroy, a seasoned strategist, political operator and partner of Premier National. With deep experience across campaigns, policy and power corridors, Kathryn brings a sharp lens to the story behind the result, and especially what it means for businesses in Australia. I think everyone in the region in the Indo-Pacific is aware that we've just gone through a federal election on the weekend, and that continuity, I guess, must be of benefit to both sides, even though not everyone agrees with the outcome. I think continuity is definitely a good thing for all of us. Tell me, it was rather interesting. I don't think it was a surprising result though on the weekend. The coalition's performance. How did you think they went over the campaign period?
Oh, look, I'll go back just and pick you up on the whether it was a surprise. It was a surprise to me, many people around the success of the numbers of seats that Labor picked up, including those in Victoria from the Liberal Party. So there were aspects that were, Labor majority was looking good, but not. I mean, this is extreme. This was a lot more than anyone had really thought that would be up for grabs. So there were elements of surprise.
Yeah, and that's really, really important too. I think because everyone's going to be looking at what impact, especially small to medium businesses, how it's going to affect them moving forward. Whereas policy, workforce strategy, sovereign capability. Um, what do you think we can expect from the Albanese government and the administration? Yeah, for the next 3 years, do you think there'll be any disruption to small, especially the small and medium business because they are the backbone of the country?
Oh,
What do you think we're going to see?
around the small and medium business, I'm glad you raised that point because for me, this was a massive blind spot in the campaign for Labor. I was waiting the whole time for some more to be done around the small business policy, but there just wasn't a whole lot announced that I could see. Whereas it was much the same with the coalition. There was a lot more could have been done in this space. This is a huge part of the voting community. So I think that there'll be a need to do something with small business, and that will again that the engagement will depend on who the minister is, and where they sit in the pecking order, and what ideas that they come up with. But I do think that the government will want to leave a legacy. There'll be legacy items making a difference, those types of things, which will be a very good thing for them to do and get on and deliver what they've promised. But it's, the second term, the Prime Minister has been given a mandate. People know where he stands on things, and he was criticised about the voice. But again, you can criticise someone and not agree with them, but you can respect them for standing up for something, doing what they say.
That's a good
So,
point. That's a good
you
point.
know,
Yeah. Well, so what would you be advising your clients? So let's talk about critical industries. So
mm,
we've spoken about the likes of RZ Resources and critical minerals, but what about in energy, health, food and agribusiness? What would you be advising your clients right now?
well, it goes across the board, regardless of the industry, is that what you want to be putting into place is a plan where you know what's going on in Canberra. And because of the large majority and also the makeup of the Senate once it's finalised, things will be able to move through very quickly. So you want to be able to know where your touch points are, know what's coming up in your portfolio areas, really be honing in on that environmental scanning and making sure you're across the legislative programs when the sitting weeks are on and those types of things. But more broadly, I'd have a parliamentary strategy over the 48th Parliament. It's not just an annual type of arrangement, which I know businesses and corporates tend to do in financial years and the like. But I think from a government perspective, being able to look over a parliamentary term is the way to do it. And being able to map out all of the important things that are happening when there's going to be budgets, when you put your pre-budget submissions in, what you're asking for, how you're positioning your argument to government, making sure you've got those long-term relationships from the new MPs that are just coming in all the way through. So regardless of what happens, you've got a good group of people who understand either your industry or your business. They understand what you're trying to achieve. They understand where the pressure points are, and really having that genuine, honest engagement. And we're talking about Trump. It's all about relationships. The political game is all about relationships. So my advice is firmly keep building the relationships, speak to people, tell your story, get ahead of the game, understand where your industries are vulnerable or where government might have an appetite to increase regulations. So it's really just staying across your brief and keeping a very close eye on what's happening in Canberra.
Yeah, and that's obviously something you guys can really help with, especially you talk about relationships, Kathryn, and you've it's the earned versus earned relationships. And my old saying is your network is your net worth. And you've developed your strong network over the last however many, we don't get to talk about years, obviously. Given you just turned 21, you started work when you were one. Um,
Love it.
but it is important, isn't it? Because people buy from people and people buy from people they trust. And it's not just about selling things, but it's about even, well, okay, if Kathryn's going to bring a client, to me, it's not going to be someone who's going to waste our time. It's someone who's going to make a difference to what we're trying to achieve. So I couldn't underestimate the value in that. But
Yeah.
tell me, just quickly as well, how do you think? We talk about Trump. What about other areas in the Indo-Pacific, relationships with Indonesia, Vietnam? China is a big one. I think that the CCP be fairly happy with the outcome on the weekend, but also just the context of regional security, trade, emerging power dynamics. Do you think that the re-election of the Albanese government's going to change any of that? What can we expect?
Oh, I think you're right. There's going to be a bunch of people that are really happy, and that again goes to the relationships that the Prime Minister has been investing in, not just in the last little while, but over many, many years. And when you point out that potentially China's going to be very happy about this election, that's very, very good for our trading prospects, and the Prime Minister will maintain his lines and his stance and be an honest person when he engages with them, when he says, we will disagree on some things, but still recognizes China as an important partner from a trade perspective. And whilst the implications from the US are enormous, anything that's happening with China seriously affects our economy. So I actually think it's good for China, but it's really good for Australia. And the Prime Minister will maintain those relationships, which is great. In saying that, there's also the Pacific that you raised, that we do have to be really mindful about what's happening and how we work with with the countries around us. And from that perspective, I think what you can expect to see more of in this particular parliamentary term from the Labor government is further interparliamentary relations. I think you'll see a whole range of different parliamentary delegations spending a lot of time in the region and building relationships. And that'll be led by the Labor Party, but it will be a bipartisan approach. Because we need to do that. We know that those threats are sitting there and they're very, very real. So I think that's what I would be expecting. In the region. And I think that to the point we were talking about before about the stability, keeping Minister Wong in her portfolio, um, and keeping the Deputy Prime Minister in his portfolio. And all of these people have their own relationships that they've also been working on. So it's really important for not only the stability of our country, but for our neighbours as well.
So, AC, give me 30 seconds on Premier National.
So Premier National, we are Australia's largest bipartisan, privately owned government relations firm, and fundamentally we work with our clients to navigate all things related to engagement with politics and politicians and government, and understanding what's happening in Canberra. Also, we've got certainly we've done a lot of work in New South Wales and also Queensland as well. So we've got a broad ranging clientele, and we cross most portfolio areas. And yeah, I joined about was it the middle of February, so just a couple of months in, really.
Well, they're lucky to have you. I know that for a fact. How important are the connections that you've got in the US, and especially in getting deals done in what's become a fairly unstable region and relationship?
Look, in terms of the more generally, the relationships with the US are absolutely critical, and it's it's actually understanding who's driving what and who the influences are. And I look at Donald Trump, and I think, this is not your classic way to do government relations. There's a lot of what I call soft diplomacy, understanding who's in his orbit, who's he playing golf with, those types of things. So there's a lot of people that are much more connected in Washington than I'll ever be, but certainly as an observer and seeing the work that's gone into what the embassy has been doing and trying to work with the administration, it's been really, really impressive. Ambassador Rudd has done a great job um, in terms of being able to engage. And for the discussion around the tariffs, it's one of those things that people, whilst they were critical of the 10%, there was really no avenue where we weren't going to get tariffs. And to get only 10, which will have an impact, is really it's a good outcome. But sitting alongside of that, there's an opportunity for the Australian government to work with the administration on a bunch of other things, including the critical minerals piece and the processing piece, and what we can offer to them as an ally, as a friend, um, and be able to partner with them on those types of things where you do see China distorting markets and even things like germanium and gallium, and and stopping them going into the US and putting licenses on other critical minerals. We have real opportunity to do some very, very good things with this administration. And I think the comments by the president about the prime minister were really, really comforting in terms of them respecting each other, having a good relationship. Was excellent. So I think we are well placed.
So what's next on the cards for you?
So it's what we're doing at the moment is we're waiting to see the lay of the land. There's obviously a bunch of seats that are going to take some time to actually call.
Mm.
You've seen people potentially claiming seats that they thought they won that they may not have won. So, particularly Goldstein, there's a point out for that one today. But what's happening now is looking at the way that the factional system works is that it's a numbers based approach, and that determines who gets what positions and which faction gets how many cabinet spots and so on. So based on the numbers, and there's in Queensland, as you'll be well and truly aware, Todd has picked up a bunch of seats, and they've predominantly been in the left faction. So the left faction may well get another spot in cabinet. So it's looking at the numbers is what we're doing at the moment, working out what the moves might look like. As I said, stability will be really important, particularly with those existing positions that are essentially that leadership team. Then just determining, who moves around, who are the winners, who are the losers, and what that means for the makeup of the parliament, what positions get traded off, who goes on to what committees, because being a chair of a committee is a big deal. It's a good stepping stone to becoming a minister and getting a profile and delivering in the parliament. So there's lots of different things at play in terms of what the lay of the land will look like. Obviously, the opposition are working out exactly the same types of things, and you know, working out who's going to be leader, but they're still working out who's going to be voting to be leader as well. So it's a bit of a funny old week this week after an election that you're sitting around going, right, what does this look like? But from certainly a client perspective, what it is, it's being able to start thinking about what a plan looks like for that parliamentary term. And as soon as we understand who sits where, what the stakeholder makeup looks like, that's when the real rubber hits the road. So Still having a couple of champagnes this week, but things will be much more intense over the coming weeks, I can assure you. If we go back to the very point that we're really focused on today, is the relationships. Is that if you think about these people, these are good people that are in Parliament. You know, parliamentarians get a pretty bad rap, but they're also human and they're also hurting, but they're also relevant. And it's being able to, you know, maintain the dialogue, sit down with them early. You know, it is really important to maintain that engagement across the aisle. And, you know, even with the crossbench now in the House of Reps and the Senate, whilst not as relevant previously, they still get to put private members' bills up. They still have an agenda. They're still fighting to be re-elected. So engaging across the board is really important. So it's not just never do just one side.